Good afternoon. Today is the final day of Game of Thrones. And on Korra, I had sort of thrown out a question. If season 8 was an allegory of the 2016 presidential election. And somebody who I asked to answer that, thinking that I was being joking, was like, I would love to know what you mean. And so this is a quick video about how I think that Game of Thrones season 8 is very reminiscent of the 2016 presidential election. And like and subscribe and hate and comment and be confused below. So Daenerys Targaryen, the first of her nation, blah 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 blah, breaker of change, blah 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 blah, destroyer of King's Landing, is Donald Trump, and has been Donald Trump for the entirety of the season and the entirety of the series. And before you think, Frank, this is just some weird thought, remember the show did start out as sort of a, has a number of different allegories in it. War of the Roses is the background of it. The fact that they put President Bush 41's head on a pike to mean Rob Snark does lead some way that there can be some politics involved in the show. So Daenerys Targaryen is Donald Trump and has been throughout the entirety of the series. Privilege, but knocked down a peg, takes a few steps forward, building a Trump Tower, takes a few steps back, gets put out in the desert somewhere, has 3 kids, has a lot of hot spouses. The only kid that she cares about is the one that she's riding right now. The other 2, they're great, but they're not really as important. That's Eric and Don Jr. Going into the end of last season, basically the White Walkers are sort of the, that is the sort of round of other Republicans that are there. And some have sort of thought that Donald Trump didn't really want to run for president. And so Hillary Clinton / Jeb Bush, who is Cersei, basically they come together with an agreement. These are the 2 most powerful. We'll take down the rest of the establishment Republicans, which is the White Walkers, and then we'll figure it out from there. So Daenerys goes up there, and of course Cersei doesn't follow. Cersei cleans house around her place and starts building up with treasury, much like Hillary Clinton did in getting a ton of money. Finds a companion in essentially King of the Iron Islands. There is essentially like a Jeb Bush, and Daenerys goes up there and goes against the White Walkers. And the White Walkers are, at the time, I think there were 19 Republican candidates. So let's take 13 of them. And the King White Walker was Marco Rubio. And you could tell because he was the man out of central casting. He was the one who, he was sort of the inevitable, not Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush was falling apart, and it would be young, Hispanic, good-looking, bilingual, snarky, could ride the dragon when needed to be. And Donald Trump's allies, and I put that in air quotes, were not really his friends, right? They're not his friends. And if you look at him, the people that have worked on his campaign, he had some diehard friends that are there, and he had some that were like from other parts. Jon Snow essentially is, I guess you could say, like a Mike Pence, in that he should know more than he does, but he doesn't, because Mike Pence knows nothing in a certain respect. So they have the Battle of Winterfell. Essentially, that's the Republican primary, at least to clear the field. And you get to the final step, and Arya Stark is, and I know you can picture it in your head, you can see the resemblance, Chris Christie. So if you remember the debate in which basically Chris Christie compares Marco Rubio to just a robot that needed rebooting, And basically, Arya Stark rebooted the king. And so gets destroyed, and then becomes the one-on-one battle against essentially Jeb Bush and Cersei, right? And the Khaleesi, the Breaker of Chains, Daenerys, essentially has a lot of friends who used to have a lot of friends. And then in running for this office, burned them all to the ground. So as we end into the final episode, a lot of people hate the penultimate episode. I thought it was great. This is where I come up with my allegory here. Basically, Donald Trump burned everybody to the ground and took out, essentially took out Bill and Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush and smacked them upside the head and kept coming. And so now we're in the final episode, and this is the post-election heart and soul of the remaining, we'll call it Republicans, the regular Republicans, because you've seen some turncoats within the Republican Party. Longtime members, remember, you either die the villain, or you either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. And you've seen some of the inner circle start to weed apart. You know, you could argue that Rod Rosenstein is essentially the eunuch who was going behind his back to try to get rid of Cersei, or excuse me, get rid of Daenerys. And in the final episode, I am very interested to see what happens. I don't know if Mike Pence, aka Jon Snow, takes the throne. I think there will be another. I think there will be an outsider, and much like you could say that this final episode could be what some would have are the hopes and dreams of what the end of the Trump presidency is. We'll see it, but I think I think most of the series, at least from Daenerys Targaryen's perspective, she's Donald Trump. And it just sort of came together in the last couple seasons that this is the Trumpster. Because remember, no script. Going completely off script there. There's no Fire and Ice books to go from. So that's my thought, and that's why I think, and it's being proven, that the Khaleesi is Donald Trump, especially with the fake hair. Just putting it out there.